an interesting article just came out this week, and it has to do, it originated from the CPAP recall that we've talked about, where, millions of these devices have been recalled. And I think we talked about in prior episodes about how these problems were going on back since like 2011. Yeah. But then the actual recall didn't happen until 2021. So there's a huge gap of time and a lot of question about, well, why didn't the FDA do anything? And why, what happened? How many complaints were there? When did the complaints come in? Why did it take literally 10 years? Why did people continue using this dangerous product for 10 years when they should have recalled it earlier?
Prioritizing profits.
Dangerous drug and product cases.
Welcome back. Another week, another episode. Prioritizing profits, dangerous drug and product cases. We're back at it again. Always excited to hop on the show. I've had a pretty good weekend. I don't know about you. Do you want to start off and tell us how you've been doing?
Well, yeah. Actually, I had a fabulous weekend. We were in Sedona. Got in two just gorgeous hikes. I mean, it was cool up there, colder than it is here. So I started out bundled up, but as we got into it, taking off layer after layer. But it was gorgeous scenery, great time with the dogs. We had amazing Airbnb, a hot tub, beautiful backyard. It was, had some good meals and just very relaxing. Last week was a bit of a stressful week, and so it was just really great to get away. I mean, it's like a 4-hour drive, so it's a little bit of a road trip, but just far enough to feel, like you're away from home.
Yeah, like it's a vacation. You're traveling away. Yeah. You have a different atmosphere, different vibe. I 100% agree. I kind of like that with staycations. Yeah. And I think like Tucson and Phoenix, because they're so close, but they still are kind of different in their own, unique ways. I definitely get that same type of feeling.
I was actually thinking about you guys because you haven't been to Sedona, and it's like an hour and a half from you guys. Wow. So that would be a perfect staycation place for you. I mean, it would be, basically like coming to Tucson for a staycation, but very different scenery. It is a little bit cooler. You're getting up in elevation there a little bit more. Yeah,
we've actually discussed it because Christina, I don't know, apparently this is a thing. I had no idea, but fortune telling and like palm reading, tarot card. Oh, yeah. Massive there.
Well, it's where the vortexes are.
Oh, yeah, vortex.
There's all of that.
I love the vortex.
Yeah, and funny story for you about Peter with that, but but they have all of these crystal shops, and they're big on like the aura photography, and if you've heard of that, where they take a picture and it shows like just some special kind of camera that'll show what your aura is, and then they'll analyze it.
Sounds like an expensive camera.
I'm a little skeptical, I'll just admit. We did not get our aura photos taken.
Yeah, I'm very skeptical of those things. And I think that it having the reputation of being the hot spot, if you really want to get the good readings, the good stuff, the real stuff, then you got to go there. Makes it even more scammy because that's it's like the easiest place to scam. People are going to go out there specifically looking for it and going to be even more gullible.
So we went into one of these crystal shops. And another customer came in and they're like, oh, I need a psychic reading. Are there any psychics here?
Did he come in like screaming and yelling like he just got off the road? Jesus Christ, do we have a psychic here?
It's an emergency. Is anybody a psychic?
Is anyone a psychic? Please, for the love of God.
No, he seemed pretty casual about it, but definitely had traveled to Sedona to get some psychic reading. But the response was, well, yeah, we have a lot. Yeah. And I was like, well, how many do you have? And they literally had like pictures, like you go into like a doctor's office and they might have like the various surgeons and specialists and all like in a hospital or photos, and they had all these photos of psychics up. But I was like, well, they're all here. It's kind of
yeah. Crazy. I mean, I kind of imagine they'd be like, oh yeah, we have a lot, and they're like, oh, where? Like, oh, follow me, and take them out back to like a shed, and there's just like 30 of them packed in there. Hey,
pick your. Well, there was
take your pick. Yeah, no. Actually, it's almost like a dog pound, right? They take the bag.
cages.
Yeah, and everyone's like going up to the cages. Pick me, pick me.
Yes, please adopt me, adopt me. Let me tell your fortune.
I'm assuming it probably wasn't like that, but.
Well, I didn't. So there was like a back room, and it had the curtains down where you'd like walk through into whatever's going on back there. But we did not venture back there. In fact, I think we were like persona non grata because I think I told you we have had a little incident with a neighbor down south in Sonoyta.
I'm sure you've told me about incidents. I don't know if I've heard of this one specifically.
Well, we have a nasty neighbor. And, I don't even care if she's listening to this. We refer to her as the troll, but everybody does. The troll. Everybody does. She's just a nasty, awful person.
The Senora Troll.
Yeah.
That does sound familiar, actually.
Well, but so what happened last week is that Peter was walking the dogs, and Ava barked at her. She was not on her leash. We admit that. But she did not bite her or touch her. She just barked at her. And this woman is just horrendous. And she has complained. She doesn't like the dogs. But, we're on these 35-acre plots. Anyway, she said she was going to report a bite and that we were going to have to put her down.
Interesting.
Yeah. Anyway.
It's aggressive.
It's like beyond aggressive.
I mean, isn't that illegal, right? I mean, that's...
Well, making a false report is illegal.
Exactly.
So, but, and I'm sure she has reported it. Nobody's come yet. But it's very concerning. I mean, somebody basically saying they want to kill your dog.
Yeah.
Anyway, she's awful. She's just a disgusting person. And anyway, she does like this crystal healing and some other crap like that.
It's okay. Things are adding up now.
Things are adding up. Anyway, so when we went to the crystal shop in Sedona, Peter was all, but they're like, "Oh, can I help you?" And Peter's like, "Yeah, do you have any death crystals?"
I thought it was going to be like, well, are all you guys dog killers over here? Did we just get unlucky with this one?
No. But he's like, all these crystals are for healing and for this and for that. Peter's like, "Do you have a death crystal?" And the guy's like, "Well, that might be like plutonium or uranium or something like that. And we don't carry them." Anyway, we were joking, of course, but
yeah. Well, it's a good story. I mean, we've definitely considered going up to Sedona. I think it looks like a lot of fun, and like you said, it's so close.
And great restaurants. You do like to eat out. There's some really good restaurants. Yeah.
I love mixing it up a little bit. Yeah. Well, I'm glad that you were able to have a relaxing weekend, especially after the stressful one that you had last week. Hopefully got a little bit of a reset and ready for this upcoming week.
Yeah. And so back here and just doing some holiday shopping and wrapping and all of that.
Amazing. Oh, yeah. I similarly had a pretty relaxing weekend. I've been grinding like crazy during the week. Just so with all the crypto stuff, market's going up, market's turning around right now. We're feeling pretty good about it. And one of the things I love about this, and I was feeling this when I was working like a 9 to 5 back when I did, was that when I came home, I wanted to kind of like keep on going. I feel like you're almost stuck until like for a certain amount of time, right? Like there's nothing that you can do outside of your work day to really push forward in a lot of fields. And one of the things I love about crypto is that there's always something to do. There's always something
24/7 because it's international, right? I mean, there's always,
When I'm going to bed, someone else is waking up and starting their day. So this weekend was kind of like a relaxing weekend, more or less. But Saturday, Christina's work had a office party, a Christmas office party, and I guess they've been doing it for the last few weeks. And the way that they do it is they rent out a venue, and it's on Saturday evening, and then everyone from different offices around Arizona, and they also fly out people from out of state. So they have like a Vegas office. I think they have like a California office, and so they fly them in.
Oh, so Arizona is the main one?
Yes, I think Arizona is the main one. And so we went to that, and I offered my place for the pregame because where they were hosting it was like 2 minutes away from my house, and everyone else lives, pretty far away. So I offered my place, and I've met her coworkers before, and so I'm pretty familiar with them. They're cool. They're around, our age. All of them are pretty much in like their mid-20s, early 20s. And it was a good time, pre-gaming and all that, and I got all dressed up because I was told it was like a jeans, pretty casual event, but I had a very nice outfit planned. It was my classic, black jeans on my black cashmere sweater with the over white jacket. Anyways, I find out the day before that it's actually business fancy, is what I was told. So I had to pull out the suit pants, and I still did the cashmere sweater, and I just tucked that in.
Nice.
Looked fantastic.
If you do say so
If
yourself.
I do say so myself, I mean, I don't want to hype myself up too much. I was looking pretty damn good.
Well, how come I didn't get any pictures of this?
Well, there
have to
was
talk
a
to
good amount of
Christina.
alcohol. Yeah, and it was her fault. It's always her fault.
Well, no, I'm saying she probably has them. I just need to get her to send them to me.
She did send me 2 pictures, and they were like in motion that other people took. We didn't really get any good photos.
Oh, wow. Okay.
But it was a fantastic time. I met all of her bosses, her coworkers. It was open bar as well. It was kind of funny because some of the other boyfriends got pretty hammered. Not too bad where they're like falling over themselves, but definitely to the point where I could like, see the girlfriends being like, all right, let's maybe calm down a second. They're going to go get another drink and they'll go, no, hold on.
Yeah, my boss is here and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. And I was lucky enough to, I've learned from my past experiences, my mistakes. So I was able to stay pretty tame, but it was a great time. And then we just pretty much hung out all day Sunday and relaxed, which was a good time. It was a nice reset. Excellent.
And it's interesting just to kind of on that topic of holiday parties. I was reading an article just a couple days ago. It wasn't one of the topics I was even planning to discuss, but as you brought it up, this is like the season where there are all kinds of crazy employee complaints, sexual discrimination, sexual harassment. And what happens is, all of these businesses and law firms alike, they have these holiday parties, and oftentimes there are open bars.
Yeah.
And people get kind of crazy. And so, the behavior that they are, expected and used to in the workplace kind of goes out the door. It's usually not in an office. It's at some, nice restaurant or event space. And so, January is like, this flood of employment complaints. Yeah.
That's interesting. I mean, I was pretty surprised because I've been to office parties before. But they're usually just like potlucks. It's like, oh, you get an extra 30 minutes on your lunch break.
Yeah, no, we used to have some wild ones.
Yeah, and it was a fantastic. Like I really could see the benefit of it because I think it really brings up morale and it gets people excited in it, and it brings that it builds that camaraderie amongst your office and your peers, which I think is really beneficial.
Yeah, no, I think they're great. I mean, I used to really look forward to them, and we invited like a lot of, our media partners and vendors and people that we really worked with a lot. And it was a really nice, we did really fancy events. But that being said, there were a few occasions where people were, needing rides home. And we had one at a hotel where literally they had to go get a wheelchair to get the guy to his room.
Yeah, I was going to say, didn't they just buy him a room and then he was good to go?
He had the room, but I mean, literally physically getting him to the room. Jesus. It was that crazy.
Well, at least he kind of met you guys halfway, preparing the room for himself, knowing that he was going to have a crazy night.
Well, yeah, I think a lot of people plan to just stay at the resort, but yeah, I mean, it's and the article was actually talking about with regard to law firms and certain protocols you should put in place, and and a lot of it was limiting the alcohol. Maybe not. Sometimes they do, drink tickets instead of just flat out open bar. But who knows? Anyway, I'm glad you behaved yourself and didn't embarrass Christina, and she still has a job.
Yeah. No, I think she was very thankful, and I'm a very social butterfly, and I think. Atmospheres or like environments like that where I get to kind of like show off my social ability. People I've never met before, but I get to kind of like joke around with them. And if I get a laugh out of them, it gives me a little fuzzy feeling because I'm like, okay, yeah, people do like me.
Aww.
This is good.
People love you.
Yeah. But overall, it was a fantastic
Excellent.
weekend.
Good deal.
Looking forward to the week.
Well, and the other big news that we were talking about on Tuesday is that our YouTube channel hit 10,000 subscribers.
10,000.
Yahoo.
Absolutely insane. I mean, I think we were talking about it. We probably started around in the hundreds, maybe slightly above 1,000. And previously on your YouTube channel, I mean, it was just like the very typical, stereotypical, I guess, lawyer ads, pretty boring.
I think it was literally just whatever commercial we produced, they put it up onto the YouTube, so people could watch our commercial. Like, who does that? But since I'm surprised. And what I'm always surprised about too is that for example, my husband was not one of those 10,000. So I was like, Peter, and he said, well, I don't know how to subscribe to it. So anyway, this evening I took his phone and subscribed him.
Well, you gotta do what you gotta do. and get those extra subscribers.
So now we're like at 10,001 maybe.
Yeah, it was funny too. I was talking to Christina about it, and she was like, "Yeah, I watched like I went on a walk and I listened to like 5-year podcasts." And I was like, that was a long walk. She was like, "No, no, no. I just listened to the intro and then I skipped to the next one and listened to the intro. That's my favorite part." I was like, "That's like half the you're missing like half the episode." She's like, "No, I just like it when you guys talk about your days and your weeks." So I was like, "Well, okay, well at least someone enjoys it."
Yeah, she could be using some product that kills her, but she at least knows that you guys had a good weekend.
Exactly.
So,
Exactly.
all right.
She's getting the real info she's looking for. But that means I got to be a lot more cautious about what I say in the first 10 minutes of the show.
And then you can just go crazy.
Yeah, once we start getting into the actual cases, I am scot-free.
Good stuff. Good stuff.
Speaking of getting into cases, let's hop right into it. You want to start with updates on cases?
Sure. So one update, of course, we've talked quite a bit about the social media and young adults and teenagers and children issues. And there's a lawsuit that was filed last week by New Mexico's Attorney General. And so this is on behalf of the state, and they filed a complaint against Meta, asserting that it's a breeding ground for predators.
Jesus Christ, the terminology there is pretty aggressive as well.
Well, pretty descriptive, yes, and attention grabbing for sure. But they're saying that that Meta basically has information that children are being sexually exploited on their platform, and that they're not doing anything about it. And what they did was they had basically undercover decoy accounts, they call them. Yeah. So they set up accounts that were for fictitious children, 14 years old and younger. And they were contacted by adults, sending them explicit images, even when the kids specifically asked not to be sent these images. And that there were thousands and thousands of adult followers on these accounts. One of the examples set forth in the complaint is that they failed to detect a fictitious mother who was offering her 13-year-old daughter for trafficking. So this is a fake account, but it's set up basically as a mother offering this 13-year-old daughter. And not only did they not shut it down, they solicited the daughter's account, seeing if she wanted to advertise.
Oh my God! Seeing if they wanted
to create a page and sell advertising.
Yeah, boost some followers there.
Yeah. So and again, they keep saying, and Zuckerberg keeps saying, that they're being very strict about this, and that they're tracking these things down, they're shutting them down. But the reality is that they're not. And
on the verge of promoting it, to a certain extent.
Right. And I mean, I guess I'm sure this is a lot of it's automated and that sort of thing. But again, they have the means, they have the ability to find these things, to shut them down, and they're not doing that. And so these are fictitious accounts, but what about the real ones out there? Or just the children where they're getting, solicited by predators. So anyway, and this is a different from the other lawsuits we've talked about, where there are individuals who are claiming that they've been harmed, they've become addicted, they've suffered from the various issues with body image, suicide, that sort of thing. But this is on behalf of the state, and they are basically asking them to institute protections, or asking the court to force them to institute protections because they're not doing them voluntarily.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, and you mentioned automation. I mean, that you can automate the process of finding and banning these accounts as well, and
I would think so. Yeah, I mean, I'm not an expert at this, but I mean, they have the top of the line experts in this area,
and they see they can see the front and back end. Like any message that you send on Facebook, they have access to it. It's the same thing with Snapchat. You see this with when there's criminal proceedings and whatnot, and they subpoena these companies for the message records. They have access to it. Even Snapchat, which is intended to be you open a message and it's gone forever. They have access to it. And so I'm assuming a lot of this illegal activity is happening, in DMs. they probably, have access, or they definitely have access, and they probably have ways to be able to monitor that. It's really interesting too that it's New Mexico, because I know that New Mexico is definitely like a hotbed for trafficking and for that type of stuff because it's so close to Mexico. I mean, a lot of human trafficking is obviously going into the south, so a lot of the border states like Arizona, like Texas,
I was gonna say for us as well,
is massive, and that's also why there's so much border patrol. I mean, there's so many stops. Even when we went out to Truth or Consequence, like that was way out there, and there was border stops. There's border patrol going up and down. So it makes sense. It makes sense.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, it's very scary, and it's sad that it has to come to this. That basically they have to be forced to put protections in place, even though they're testifying before the Senate and all of this, that they're doing all of these things, and clearly they're not. And they, apparently they got caught here with some of these, this undercover investigation. So, anyway.
Well, and I do want to say too, because you mentioned this, that it is different from the original cases, which is more focused on kind of addiction and the psychological effect that social media is having, and the damages associated with it. This seems almost in a different category, like not even connected to those cases. Just the only similarity is Meta, the business, because it's about trafficking. It's about not stopping it, and they're out here, saying like, look, we are almost abusing the fact that they aren't looking for it, just to prove that they, how ignorant they're being.
Well, and there's the overlap too, that they're saying, that they, with the other cases, that they're not intentionally doing this, and that they don't realize that they're sending, sending this destructive and harmful material to younger people. But again, they're not doing anything to stop it. They probably could. I'm confident that they could. So there's definitely the overlap there, that they're, claiming they're doing the right thing and they're protecting children and young adults, and they're not.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
well, hopefully having a state file this and a state pursuing them will really put the fire under them. Although, I mean, it seems like the federal government's already been questioning them, and it's just another I don't know another block angle, on the Jenga tower, I guess.
Although I doubt that tower's ever going to fall.
Yeah, probably
it's
not.
Pretty
probably
sturdy.
Not.
It's pretty sturdy. But and maybe other states will fall in line as well and pursue these types of complaints. And again, the more pressure that gets put on, the more likely the feds and will crack down, and they'll have to do something.
Well, and I am assuming there's other criminal activity going on too. I mean, if there's human trafficking going on, that seems like pretty far on the extreme. There's a lot. I mean, just like drug trafficking and drugs selling and whatnot. I'm sure that's going on as well. And way back in the day, you saw it with Silk Road, like the smackdown that happened there with the deep web and people, being able to just buy any drug with cryptocurrency and deliver it around the country.
Ooh, I don't know about that.
Yeah, well, I mean, Silk Road was essentially like the origination of I don't know the use case of not the use case of Bitcoin, but the biggest selling point of cryptocurrency of Bitcoin is that it's anonymous, that no one has access to your funds, that you can send funds anonymously, and so there is this marketplace, almost like an eBay on the deep web that called the Silk Road, that you could buy and sell everything. I mean, it was like everything, and then obviously they're using Bitcoin for transactions, and the federal government shut it down and confiscated like hundreds and hundreds of Bitcoin, which they are currently selling right now.
Yeah.
Yeah. Very interesting.
Interesting.
Anyways,
I've learned something new for sure.
What else you got for us?
Well, so there's an interesting article just came out this week, and it has to do, it originated from the CPAP recall that we've talked about, where, millions of these devices have been recalled. And I think we talked about in prior episodes about how these problems were going on back since like 2011. But then the actual recall didn't happen until 2021. So there's a huge gap of time and a lot of question about, well, why didn't the FDA do anything? And why, what happened? How many complaints were there? When did the complaints come in? Why did it take literally 10 years? Why did people continue using this dangerous product for 10 years when they should have recalled it earlier? And so two entities, Pro Publica, and this is a nonprofit news outlet, in conjunction with the Pittsburgh Post Gazette, did a huge, I think it was like a 3 or or I don't know, maybe it's a year-long study, but they did a whole study researching into the complaints that came in, how many there were, what the problem is with the whole system. And I mean, the system really is broken. And there have been cases that would indicate this, but because CPAP is such a huge deal, I mean, there's so many millions of them out there, and the recall is so big and so many people are affected that it's more newsworthy, and it really got people diving into what the problems are with this whole system.
Yeah, and so it's delving into the problems with the system of the FDA and the approval and them receiving reports and how they handle those.
Well, so not so much of the approval because, but with when there is a problem with a product that's out on the market and when complaints start coming in with the recall process. Yeah. And so the way that it's set up is that people volunteer. Well, the company, if the company has reports, they are required to provide those to the FDA within 30 days. Okay, but then individuals, doctors, other people who are aware of this can also voluntarily report. But what was happening is that the companies report very few of them, and when they do report them, they report them, extremely late.
Yeah, I mean, I've always been even before we started this podcast, very pessimistic when it comes to the FDA, and it's crazy to me the amount of trust people have in it. I mean, there's like the selling point that a lot of medications and supplements have is FDA approved, don't worry about it. And in my head, I'm like, really means absolutely nothing in some situations. And I'm glad that finally there is, almost an expose coming out about it. People are doing that research and finding out just how big of a problem this is. The fact that the companies are not punished more for withholding complaints, and if they are putting them out there, it's not as many as are being reported, and it's taking so long. I mean, it's just so insane to me, because depending on the problem, you could be putting hundreds of thousands, if not millions of Americans' lives at risk. And the FDA's entire point of it is to be able to, or entire point of FDA is to essentially, make sure products are safe for mass consumption.
Yeah, no, exactly. And, and a lot of these products, they are getting approved through this streamlined process where, they're substantially similar. So they don't go through all of this pre-market approval. And then the way that you find out if there are problems are, post-release once they're out on the market. And that's part of why this system is set up, that they're required within 30 days to report to the FDA if they do have complaints. And I can't find the exact numbers, but it was like something about, they maybe reported like 30 complaints, but then there were 60,000 complaints that they didn't report.
I mean, that's just disgusting. That's insane.
Right. Well, exactly. I mean, it's absolutely absurd. But then what this study is indicating is that basically nothing happens to them. They rarely get fined. And I think that, again, this expose came because of this huge situation with the CPAP. And so potentially things may change. One of the things that they talked about was that there was they have been putting millions of dollars into a new system to kind of catch these things as they start, a new computer system. The computer system they were using was apparently from the 1990s. And
how is this a computer system problem, though? Because it seems like more of an issue with like the entities itself reporting it and withholding information.
Well, it's a combination. So they don't report, but then even when they do report, even say the 30 that they do report, who's looking at them? Who's actually reviewing these complaints? Yeah. And are they catching, because there's hundreds of thousands of different devices. So you get a complaint about a CPAP, then you get 50 other complaints, then you maybe see another CPAP one. Who's looking at them? And at the time they first started looking into this, I think in 2016, and they had this system from the 1990s and 20 people reviewing literally hundreds of thousands of complaints. And they said that they had like little stickies on their computer, and I mean, it was just absurd. And the FDA won't say now how many people are actually reviewing the complaints, but there's hundreds of thousands of them. And, these things are going to slip through the cracks. We can't count on the companies to do the right thing. Yeah. But so then the company with or the entity with the oversight, the FDA, needs to be stronger, be the watchdog, be, ensuring that they can force the companies to do the right thing.
Well, I mean, I think this has been a problem for a long time, right? Like the entire reason that a lot of these guardrails exist is because there's this almost expectation or, realization that like, okay, a lot of these companies aren't going to do what they're supposed to. They're not going to do what they're asked to do. So you need these guardrails in place. And the FDA, for a long time, it seemed like hasn't been nearly as strong, not nearly as I don't know if it's funding issue or, how many people, 20 people. I mean, that's absolutely insane. And with how much power the FDA could have theoretically, I don't think they really exercise it very often.
But they're not, but that's just it. I mean, they can pursue criminal penalties. They can pursue, hefty fines, but it's just really not happening. And so you're basically leaving, the fox guarding the hen house type of thing. I mean, it's just absurd.
So how does this get fixed? Because this seems like a bigger issue than a computer issue or a bigger problem than just having more people reviewing these complaints. I mean, this really seems like a problem that's top down. That is, the FDA at its core, whoever's running it, whoever's kind of at the top, wouldn't be surprised taking a little something under the table, taking a little something on the side, because I mean, the amount of cases that we've seen, I mean, the entire, mass tort, faulty products and medications industry is really surrounded by the FDA and kind of their inability to guard the hen house.
Well, yeah, it's like the lawyers have to step in and do,
their work. If the FDA is
punish them and make the companies comply through the court system, unfortunately. But it's funny that you mentioned that because so after one of the major recalls that happened back in 2016, the agency awarded like $3 million to a nonprofit medical device innovation consortium, and the purpose was that they were trying to establish a center to bring together the information, collect electronic medical records, insurance claims, medical registries, use all of these things to try to get better signals when there was a problem with a particular product. Mm-hmm. And then over these past 8 years, they've devoted millions of dollars to the effort, and they said that the investigation showed that a lot of that money was for travel, consultants, technology, and bonuses.
Dollars, I assume too, right?
Yeah, well, absolutely. Yeah, and yet here we are, we're 8 years later, and we're not seeing anything really coming of it. So I think one of the things that may happen by this expose is people are going to be called to account for that, to account for all of these funds that are supposed to be making the system better. And, the interesting thing, too, is that this whole consortium involves people from the medical device companies as well, who maybe, again, don't have such an interest in it. Yeah. So it sounds a little bit fishy, or maybe a lot of bit fishy. So, I mean, I'm hopeful that an expose like this will, focus some more attention on it, put some more pressure. Yeah. If this system isn't going to work, if this consortium is not right, shut it down, do something else, get some different people involved in it. But this type of, preventable injury, I mean, 10 years of people suffering from, these horrible conditions. And again, it's a long article. It's something, you certainly might want to take a look at it. It's by Pro Publica and the Pittsburgh Post Gazette. But they talk about a couple of other recalls, too. They weren't as huge, didn't involve as many people, but, some really significant injuries and deaths. And these things could have been prevented because there were complaints submitted about the various products, and it wasn't pursued until years later. And in those intervening years, lives are lost.
Yeah. I mean, hopefully it brings more attention to it. I think it will either way. It's inevitable that more attention will be brought to it. But I'm very pessimistic that it's going to lead to any real change, because I think a lot of the time what happens is that, people get up in arms and they're like, really frustrated about it. And maybe it brings a lot of heat to this company or this entity. And then a few weeks later, people forget, people move on. The next new celebrity gets married, and it's like, oh, well, who really cares now? And nothing ends up actually happening.
Well, I'll tell you who cares. The lawyers still care. So we just have to ride in on our white horses. And I guess we just have to keep carrying the torch, because
I guess
if the FDA is not going to do it, damn it.
Yeah, well, and it's, I mean, I think it's good too, because hopefully it will also, wake people up with how, I don't know, take away this blind trust that the FDA has, because it's just always been so crazy to me how people think that because it's a governmental entity that it's just, slip clean, they do everything by the book, that they're doing everything in their power to make sure that, they're protecting the American population, which just really isn't the case, obviously.
Yeah, it's a false sense of safety, for sure.
Which is almost worse than, the opposite of that, of not having any guardrails, because at least at that point, people would be a little bit more aware, Now they're just blindly trusting.
Question more.
Exactly.
Yeah. No, it's scary. I mean, again, I'm not terribly surprised. And being in this business, we've seen, we'll learn through the cases, how many complaints were made and that nothing was done. But I think the average person doesn't realize that. And so, a big expose like this hopefully will bring that to light.
Could there ever be a lawsuit against the FDA about this type of stuff? I mean, it seems like they're almost aiding and abetting in some of these damages.
Well, there's a lot of restrictions on how you can sue governmental entities, and the standards
protect them to let them do whatever they want, just about.
Yeah, so I don't foresee that happening, but hopefully getting them whipped into shape.
Hopefully. Well, once is that expose actually out now?
Yes, it is.
Okay. All right. Yeah, we'll throw the link into.
Yeah, let's put the link out there. I think it just came. December 7th.
Yeah, we'll throw a link into the description. Highly recommend everyone to check it out. And if, we definitely do get a lot of people that are, suspect of some of the statistics and some of the things that we say on the show, which honestly, I'm happy about. I think ask questions and, don't trust everything you hear and that you say, because obviously organizations like the FDA, if you can't trust them, then it's a good thing. You should be questioning them. Questioning us, question them.
Question everybody. Lots of questions.
Exactly. So definitely take a look at that. I know I'll probably be taking a read at that after this show as well.
Good deal. So the next issue up, as far as update, we've been talking about the Ozempic cases, and that a number of cases were getting filed. Yeah. There were only a few, but many more to come. And of course, we also were speaking recently about several other cases where the defense would automatically file a motion to dismiss, saying that the claims were not viable. And that, of course, did happen also with this initial Ozempic case, and the motion has been denied. So it's gotten kind of through that first hurdle, and those cases will be moving forward and pursued. And again, each of these steps generally results in more cases coming forward and getting filed. So, this is one we've talked about a lot, and I'm sure we will continue to talk about, but it's not going away anytime soon.
Yeah, it's interesting because I was talking to someone at the office party actually about it, because they do a lot of, their primary thing is testing drugs, right? They do a lot of the kind of like studies on it. And I brought up obviously what we do and what you do. And it was one of the most, easy ones to talk about is Ozempic, because everyone knows about it. And I don't know if you've heard about this, but someone that I was talking to mentioned of one of the side effects that they heard was happening was like almost stroke like paralysis of the face, where people were just losing control of like half their face from taking Ozempic, and it was kind of one of the side effects unmentioned. Yeah,
I've not heard that. I mean, there were a lot of complaints of what they called Ozempic face, which was just like the faces being very saggy from like a lot of the fat loss in the face, and so people looked unrecognizable. But actual like paralysis, I have not.
It sounded interesting because obviously with the stomach paralysis, I was like, well, paralysis.
Well, it's a little bit different because the way that Ozempic works though too is to just slow down the gastric emptying to keep the food in your stomach longer, and you don't feel hungry and you actually can't eat more. So it makes sense that stomach paralysis would be related, but. Well, I guess if your face is paralyzed, you can't chew.
Be eating, exactly. Slowing down the jaw, you're not going to be able to get much in that belly.
I don't know. I've heard of a lot of stories about people who had their jaws wired shut and they were able to like drink a lot of stuff through straws and still.
Yeah, and one of the people I was talking about too was talking about how one of his significant others, I think aunts or mothers, I forgot which one it was taking Ozempic. And I was like, oh, really? Well, are you aware of some of the stuff? She's like, yeah, we've been hearing about a lot of stuff coming up. And I was like, oh, well, is she taking it for diabetes and weight loss? Oh, weight loss.
Yeah.
It's interesting. It's interesting when you hear it, people that you're familiar with and in your circle, having family members that are involved in these cases to a certain extent.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it would be actually probably surprising not to run into people who have family members, just the sheer numbers of people who are turning to it. And, I mean, it's really getting promoted, and it's getting promoted not just for weight loss for 6 weeks, 8 weeks till you get to your weight, but to use it permanently to treat obesity as a disease, like heart disease that requires lifelong medication and treatment. And the companies want people to be on this medication for life because it's $1,300 a month.
That's big.
And I mean, so they're only going to be on it for a year? No, we need them on it for forever.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's never comes a point where you want to be out of shape, where you don't want your perfect body. And hey, if Ozempic's a nice little quick hack to get the perfect body that you're looking for.
It's also not getting people perfect bodies. I mean, when you're losing muscle mass too, if you're not eating, if your body's not able to absorb the nutrients, I mean, you're not just losing the fat, you're losing the muscle. And that's a real concern for elderly people because as an elderly person, I can speak to this, our bone mass, our body mass drops, our muscle mass, we start, our muscles atrophy. And so that can be a real problem for older people. It's not just, you're not just losing the fat.
Yeah. Yeah, that's going to be one that we'll be talking about a lot, and there's a lot of just more stuff popping up about it. I'm curious to see if that facial paralysis really is something that is popping up. Maybe it was just a coincidental connection there, but
well, what it makes me think of when you say that is Bell's palsy.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering if maybe that could be, which is usually temporary, and that can be like a reaction, an autoimmune reaction or a reaction to a virus response. So I'm wondering, I don't know. I don't know what that relationship would be, but I'm curious. I'll look into it also.
Awesome. Interesting cases in the news.
Well, Tesla's always a hot topic, and and Tesla's back in the news. There is a Florida case, and this is involving a death, a 2019 crash that happened in Miami. And it was a situation where the Tesla drove under the trailer of an 18-wheeler truck that had turned in front of it. And so, sheared off the top of the vehicle and killed the person. And it's going back to this whole autopilot, because autopilot is failing or can fail to detect cross traffic. But the import of this case, though, is that the judge is allowing a claim for punitive damages. And we've talked about that a lot. I mean, there's the compensatory damages, but punitive damages are really when the jury wants to punish the defendant because they're really pissed off. It's not just, oops, we're sorry, we made a mistake. It's like, this shouldn't have happened.
Yeah.
And the reason that the judge is allowing punitive damages in this case is because it was actually, the judge said that the accident was, quote, eerily similar to another accident in 2016, another fatal crash, where the autopilot system did not detect a truck crossing in front, and the vehicle went underneath the trailer and killed that person. So what the judge said is that we know that Tesla knew about this. There's a case that's eerily similar that happened in 2016. And yet, so they know that there's and probably they know about a lot of other situations that potentially didn't end up in a death and a lawsuit.
Yeah.
But because they're aware of the problem with the autopilot failing with cross traffic, they knew or should have known about this. We're going from 2016 to 2019. Why did they not do something? Why did they not put out warnings? Why did they not recall? And why do we have another death on our hands? So that's the type of reasoning that can get you to a punitive damage award.
Yeah, the punitive damages is a really big deal. And I think especially for a company like Tesla, which has such a almost sparkling, clean kind of like social opinion about it, right? Like everyone loves Elon Musk, everyone loves Tesla.
Well, not everyone either loves or hates him.
Yeah. Everyone loves
It's
it.
very divisive.
But the people that love him love him.
Right, right.
And Tesla also has this almost not better than thou, but because they are electric vehicles, they're being highly recommended because by driving them, you're saving the environment, and it's just a very safe, good thing to buy. So the punitive damages, kind of putting that on Tesla, know that this is an issue that they should have known about and that this was avoidable, I think is really big.
Yeah, well, I think it definitely is. And I mean, I think there are a lot of great things about the product. And I think, with any product, nothing's perfect.
Yeah.
There are going to be problems. And the key is when you learn about the problem, address it right away.
Yeah.
Don't ignore it. Don't push it under the rug. Address it, fix it, warn about it.
Yeah.
And doing that, again, nobody's attacking Elon Musk because we haven't accused of that before. I was tempted to get a Tesla. I opted not to so far, but a great product, but you simply have to do the right thing.
Yeah.
And then this case, the judge is going to let this claim go forward. We don't know what the jury will do with it. We don't know what the other evidence is that has not become public yet, but it'll be interesting to see.
Yeah, just that door is open is going to be interesting, and seeing how the jury deals with that. With the autopilot, I mean, it's been crazy too, because I see these Waymo vehicles going around all the time around in Scottsdale, and I think that's just so insane. Like, there's actually no one in the car. Like, at least with the autopilot, there's someone at the wheel. Even though you still see those videos of people like sleeping on the highway with autopilot going, which you're obviously not supposed to do.
Gosh.
But with Waymo, it's even crazier to me, because the fact there's just no one in the vehicle, and there's like clips of police officers trying to pull over a Waymo vehicle, and it just like doesn't realize it's getting
Flip
pulled
them off
over
or something.
Well, it just like keeps trying to go around the police officer, and it just like won't stop, and there's people in the back that like can't get out. It's a whole thing. But I think that with the autopilot, it makes sense that there's a lot of issues that is associated with it, and I wouldn't be surprised to see more popping up in the future.
Yeah. Well, and on that note, just as of today, they had announced that there is a recall of 2 million vehicles over autopilot safeguards, and it was specifically addressed towards this auto steering, but part of the issue is that people assume, when you call it autopilot, the intent is for somebody still to be there and to be paying attention, but it's not really promoted that way. I mean, like you said, in autopilot, it sounds like you can just kind of take a nap or not pay as much attention. And so this is a new software update that they are going to be putting out for basically all of the Tesla vehicles. And they're not specific about what it's going to do. Let me see what exactly they say.
Well, that's what I was thinking too, because this is a situation. It makes even more sense that punitive damages are on the table, because this isn't something where they have to recall all of the Teslas. Like, they are able to put out updates across all of the units, and not, it's still convenient for the users. Like, it's not really taking anything.
Yeah, you don't
have
have to take it in and take it.
Exactly.
Yeah. So what they're saying is that Tesla says it doesn't agree with the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration's analysis, but it is going to deploy an over-the-air software update that will, and this is the quote, incorporate additional controls and alerts to those already existing on affected vehicles to further encourage the driver to adhere to their continuous driving responsibility whenever Autosteer is engaged. So basically, and I don't know what the specific alerts and controls are in place already, but they're saying, okay, you've got the Autosteer, but you still have to be paying attention.
Yeah.
So whatever they're going to do is going to enhance how they're going to make people pay attention.
So very unrelated to that, but it's something that it reminds me of as we watched a movie this weekend. It just came out on Netflix. It's with Julia Roberts. I don't remember what it's called.
Oh, is it Leave the World Behind?
Yeah. I think that's what it's called.
I haven't seen it yet.
Yeah, and a little, not really a spoiler, but there is a scene where, they're on the highway and there's just like a bunch of crashed cars, and they're like, what the hell is going on here? And they're all Teslas. And it turns out that, someone hacked the, obviously just Tesla units, and were setting on autopilot and driving all of these brand new Teslas off of the lot and down the highway and crashing them into each other to like obviously clog up the highway so people couldn't
Wow.
get out of town or anything like that. But I was like, that's just so insane. I didn't even think about that. Like the potential there is really crazy. You know, you see a lot
hack
of
into
yeah.
anything that's computer operated like
yeah,
that.
cybersecurity is a massive problem. Like a lot of, I don't know, professionals, it's easy to throw that word around, but there's a lot of concerns about the next big terrorist attack being a cybersecurity risk or like it being a, cyber attack. And autopilot seems like a pretty reasonable way to go through it if you were really trying to.
All right. Well, maybe I won't get a Tesla right away then.
Yeah, I think we stay loyal to the Benz.
Well, I haven't watched that movie yet, but I did read the book. It came out it was strange the timing when the book was released because it was right in the pandemic, but it had to have been written before. But there's a lot of eerie things that kind of are similar to the whole COVID-19 thing. So I'm anxious to watch it.
Yeah, it was a fantastic movie. I will say a little anticlimactic, but it was good. It was good. I highly recommend it. Moving on though, what other interesting cases you got for us?
Well, so this is an interesting one and happened locally. A Arizona judge was actually struck and killed by a car in a crosswalk. And the driver was a Grubhub delivery guy. Mm-hmm. And it was an interesting case because they were specifically talking, well, the suit is not just against, well, obviously not just against the driver, but it's specifically against Grubhub for a couple of issues. One is a negligent hiring issue because this guy had multiple prior criminal convictions and driving violations, including multiple DUI convictions and speeding. Jesus. Yeah. So, I mean, first of all, here's this driver who's his job is to drive for you and do all of these deliveries, and he has a terrible driving record.
Yeah. I was gonna say, I mean, if someone because I know if you have a criminal record, it's obviously difficult to get a job, and Grubhub, Uber Eats, DoorDash, like that seems like a pretty reasonable path to go down if you're struggling getting other opportunities.
Yeah. Except if you're driving and you're a really crappy driver, and because you can be a crappy driver and get away with it for a long time, but if you've had like multiple DUI convictions and speeding citations and that sort of thing, how many times do you actually get a ticket for how many times you speed? I always wonder.
He picks up an order from Chipotle and he has to run to his car and blow into the breathalyzer, turn it back on.
Yeah, but and the other aspect, so there was the hiring issue. Clearly, this was not a great hire, but also because of as you're driving to deliver, you've got your phone up there and you've got they're telling you how to get someplace, and so what it does is it encourages you to take your eyes off the road because you're looking at your phone about how to get to where you're going to deliver the food. And so he blew a red light and hit this judge who was walking in the crosswalk and killed her.
I don't know if I understand that argument there, because I feel like then, I'm sure there's been a lot of car crashes that someone's been going somewhere they aren't familiar with Google Maps open, but you don't hear those type of lawsuits there. And directions, is that really incentivizing you to take your eyes off the road, or is it just directing you? And I'm sure too the phone, because I know like if you have your phone plugged into your car speaker, it says turn left at the next light.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's actually a good point, because certainly, if I'm using the Google Maps or Apple Map or whatever, I mean, I'm not looking at it as much as I'm listening to, although when you get close, sometimes there's, you're looking and you see if you're driving past it. Of course, you have to look at it, but incentivizing, I feel like in order for there to be a real lawsuit there, it has to be like they are, playing funny ads while they're driving, or they're like, hey, look over here, you got to confirm another order. Maybe that, because I know that does go on, is confirm another order. And if he was leaning over to do that, I would understand that a little bit more. But I mean, if you're just following map directions, I don't see that. Yeah, I hear what you're saying, definitely. And the wording is that the drivers must look at their Grubhub app in order to complete their deliveries, making collisions more likely. But like you said, I mean, that's the same as with any other maps.
And truck drivers don't know, how to get across this country in the back of, like the back of their hand. Like there's a ton of different driving industries where you're going somewhere you're not familiar with. You have to use a map application. There are tools there to make sure you don't have to look at the screen. Yeah.
Well, and so it'll be interesting to follow up on this as well, because, this is the lawsuit that was filed. It's not gone to a jury. It's not gone to a trial. I mean, it may settle. Who knows? I think there's a good chance on these other issues with him being just a crappy driver to start with.
Yeah.
He shouldn't have been in a job driving.
That makes sense.
That's a stronger argument.
That is,
that's a stronger argument for me, because it's very easy for you to do a background check on a potential employee. And literally when your job is driving nonstop,
It's like hiring a drug addict at a pharmacy. It's like,
bad idea.
Bad idea,
If you've got a bunch of drug convictions, if you don't
drug
do that
trafficking, and then you get hired behind the counter at a pharmacy.
And then they wonder why things are going missing.
Yeah, I wonder who it could be.
Troubling.
That is really sad, though, that especially in Arizona. I think we talk about so many cases on the show. It is, it's especially interesting when it's something that's more local. Yeah.
Well, actually, I have a couple other, if we have time for a couple
let's do it.
Quickies on Arizona. And this is one very local in Tucson. There was a verdict that just came out. I think it was Friday. Let's see. It was 2 days ago, December 11th. And this was a medical malpractice case in Pima County. Really, really sad story. It was a woman who was having shoulder replacement surgery. And in the process, the doctor tied off her axillary artery. And so basically, he cut, while he was doing the surgery, he cut off the blood circulation to her arm.
Yeah.
And as a result, they had to amputate her arm. So, so she went in for...
And woke up without her arm.
Oh,
my God.
Right.
That's like a fucking nightmare. That's honestly out of like a horror movie. You're going in, you're trying to get your shoulder fixed so you have movement of your arm so you can...
You feel better, you could be more active, and now you lost your arm.
Yeah, you wake up out of anesthesia.
Anesthesia.
Yeah, you wake up out of anesthesia and you're like, wow, this has to be a bad dream. For the love of God, please.
Yeah. Well, it was a $5.29 million verdict, which, it sounds like a lot of money, but at the same time, you think about how your life has changed. She was interviewed on the news, and she was just saying, people don't even think about it. You can't open a pill bottle without two hands. You can't wash your hair without two hands. You can't get shampoo out of a bottle. You can't open a water bottle. Think about all. If you just try to not use one of your hands for a few hours, it's just insane. So the verdict was against the doctor, $5.29 million. It seems pretty obvious that this is below the standard of care. And then what the plaintiff had said was that she just hopes that he either loses his license or has to go back for more training so that this doesn't happen to other people, which kind of brings us to the fact that this is a verdict where she's getting paid for her damages, but it doesn't stop him from practicing. That's a separate issue. And the Board of Medical Examiners could revoke his license. One of the issues with medical malpractice cases and why they're so often litigated and so rarely settled is that if a doctor does settle the case, he has to report it to his malpractice carrier and to the Board of Medical Examiners.
He has to report it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I'm assuming people just don't report it.
Well, no. If there's actually a verdict or a settlement, he has to report it. But people can make complaints to BOMEX, to the Board of Medical Examiners, even if it's not something that rises to the level of a lawsuit.
Yeah.
So that doctors, so that the board would investigate.
And do you think that he's going to lose his license here? What does this look like? Because I know that with the bar and with lawyers, they're definitely held to a very high level of a moral code. Is doctors and the medical board similar in that way?
Notoriously, and again, this is a state-by-state thing, so I can't really speak to other states, but notoriously, it's been pretty tough to have the Board of Medical Examiners take action, especially short of something like this, like a really big verdict and a really big problem. So I would expect that he would be censured. He might have his license, we'll have to see. It hasn't happened yet. He had to have his day in court. He had it. He lost. So he may lose his license. They may have him supervised. They may have him, require additional training. It's pretty extreme. It's a pretty. It seems.
Yeah, I mean, you got 4 different appendages, and one of them's gone. Just like,
Well, but I mean, here this is his specialty is is shoulder surgery.
yeah, which is interesting too that this went bad in the first place. I'm assuming because I know like if there's someone gets like shot, right, you tie it up so you don't lose blood. I'm assuming it was something along those lines where you're supposed to kind of tie it off while you're doing a certain action during the surgery, and then untie it, and then he had a little brain fart and forgot, and then boom,
A little brain fart.
and then boom, arm's gone.
Yeah. So yeah, and I don't know all of the details on it, but hopefully there will be further action, and he will not be allowed to continue these surgeries and hurt other people.
And so that was in Pima County?
That was in Pima County, yeah.
Wow.
And it was just 2 days ago the verdict came out. Yeah, it was a week-long trial.
That's crazy. Because, I mean, I think that Tucson's a pretty small town, more or less. It's not like everyone knows everyone, but I think within the medical field, within the law field, within, those type of areas, people are pretty familiar with their peers and with someone that's, working alongside them or maybe competitors, whatever it may be. So I would be surprised if he stayed in Tucson or if he was able to get another job here.
Well, yeah, and I can't imagine he's going to be in the same practice.
Yeah,
What to say about that? One other quick Arizona case that was interesting, and this happened up in Chandler, so close to Gilbert, where we've been recently.
Yeah.
And this is a crazy situation too. There's the lawsuit's been filed against the school district over a Prom-posal. Ooh. Which again, when back in my day, you would just get asked to the prom. Period. All this Prom-posal thing is just insane.
Tell me about it. Women these days, huh? They want everything. They want everything from you.
They don't want everything. You're the ones doing it. Trying to impress us.
I'm obviously kidding. Well, but there is an expectation there. I mean, it really, I remember in high school for me, I just wanted to ask my date to prom. I didn't want to make a big deal about it. But then once, one person does it.
Yeah, everybody.
And now it's a culture too.
It is a culture.
If you're not doing it, you're a piece of shit. Huh?
Yeah. And so clearly the answer is no. No, I don't want to go to prom with a piece of shit.
Exactly. And they're disappointed if you don't have this big, fireworks and shebang, shaboom about asking them. It's a fucking prom, guys. Come on. I mean, you'll forget about this in a year. It's not a big deal.
Well, and this one, and so you always have to come out with something new and different. And so this one is kind of crazy. So the kid had the girlfriend in his Porsche.
Shit, poor. Oh, okay. This is a pretty nice Prom-posal here.
Well, it's at Arizona College Prep High School. This happened last April. So he's driving a Porsche and he purposely sped through a stop sign. And the point was that the student resource officer, I don't know, whatever, that's like the security guard for the...
Would pull him over
you're getting it. This
is obvious. Yeah, you speed through the spotlight. Hey, stop, turn on the lights. Oh my God. And then he walks up and he's like, will you go to prom with Marcus? And you're like, what?
That's exactly what was supposed to happen. But the problem is he blew through the stoplight and there was a guy on a motorcycle who he hit. Jesus
fucking Christ,
yes.
Man.
Yes.
Yeah, that's insane.
I mean, I hope this girl said no. So the lawsuit's against the school because not only was the SRO in on it and planned to do this, but the freaking principal's sitting in the car with the SRO. And they tried to claim that they didn't know that this was going to happen, but obviously it was documented that they did know, and they were sitting there waiting for it to happen. And I mean, so for this Prom-posal, they're going to basically commit a traffic violation. They're going to potentially. I mean, the guy didn't die, but he was seriously injured. He was on a motorcycle, and he gets slammed into, and the guy blows the stop sign.
It's romantic.
This is how the relationship starts. I mean, can you imagine telling the story to your grandkids? This is when I fell in love with your grandpa.
Yeah. Make sure you find a good guy like this that's willing to fucking make a crime happen for you. Jesus.
Yeah. Well, so a lot of shit going down in Arizona, right?
Apparently,
we got crazy Grubhub drivers. We've got doctors who are wreaking mayhem, and we've got Prom-posals. I mean, anyway.
It seems like the streets just aren't safe here.
It is the Wild West. It is truly the Wild West.
Yeah, and I mean, God, the fact that the principal was on it is even more shocking. And
So embarrassing.
just
for
like,
them.
yeah. And then the fact that they tried to like deny it. Oh, we just so happened to be hanging out in the car, riding by, watching this happen. I mean, come on, guys.
Well, can you imagine them like, oh shit, this is not what we're.
Yeah, no, yeah. I mean, that I can't even imagine. I think I would shit my pants. I'd be like, my God, this is insane. Or to be that kid, right? Like, I mean, he's probably excited because he thinks it's a good idea, right? He's gonna be like, oh, she's gonna love this. And then that happens, and she turns, she's like, was that part of the promposal?
Well, and then
That would have been a good one. Is that the guy gets off the ground.
Off of the ground.
The motorcyclist
Bleeding.
stands up, limps over to the car. Will you go to prom with Marcus? Boom. Drop the mic. That is a good one right there. Yeah, I like that.
Well, not to be judgy anyway, but I mean, this is a high school student driving a Porsche. Maybe you shouldn't be going to prom.
I think a better way to think about it is he'll probably get out of this with a slap on the wrist.
He probably knows people.
He probably knows
has
someone.
connections.
Yeah.
All right. Well, so that's enough of the Arizona craziness for all of us.
Yeah. We are kind of coming to a close here. Was there any kind of final things you wanted to touch on? Any questions or comments?
I don't think so. I think, yeah.
Oh, actually, I do remember one thing that we wanted to talk about was Fernie. Absolute amazing guy. Fantastic. He put some statistics together on how long it takes for when someone calls and to when a case is actually signed, because there is a kind of a big difference there, and it takes longer than I think a lot of people would expect. And there's nothing necessarily on our end with it. It's more of like outside reasons. I don't know if you kind of want to touch on that.
Sure. Well, it was interesting because, I mean, it can vary a lot. And I think what ended up that we figured out was like around 60 days.
Yeah.
And a lot of people are like, well, if I could just call and tell you what's happening, why is a case not signed? And so some types of cases do require that we get medical records before we can confirm, most importantly, like what the product is. For example, hernia mesh. You just know you have a hernia mesh. You don't know what kind you have. And so we don't know if it's a problematic one until we get the records.
Yeah.
And with ordering medical records, we can get them in 2 weeks, we can get them in 6 weeks. It really varies. So that can hold things up a lot. There are other types of cases, specifically like, for example, the hair relaxer cases, where, if you have this type of cancer and you use the hair relaxer, I mean, that's pretty much slam dunk that you have a case. It's not slam dunk that you're going to win the case, but, that's something that we can pursue.
Yeah.
And so those are going to be on the very low end. It's probably going to just take, potentially a couple days to get the paperwork, circulated,
Yeah.
Or less, or but if it's going to require medical records, that just varies. The facilities vary greatly, and how long it takes them to release the medical records.
Yeah, and that was something that was really interesting, and I was so glad he put it together because I think those statistics are really important to note and to consider, because I mean we saw this with the 3M cases where it had been on the news, people had been trying to recruit cases for this and get the word out. And a lot of people just missed their opportunity. Either they didn't know about it or they, waited too long. And I think a lot of people with, I know I do this with day-to-day stuff, right? You just put it off. You're like, you know what, I'll do that tomorrow, or I'll do that next week when I, have a little bit more time. But I think it's really important with cases like this is that there is a lot that goes on in the back end. And luckily, we're more than happy to handle that entire back end stuff. There's nothing that you actually have to do other than, call and give some information there. But it's even more important for you to call out or call in time, because it does take time on our end to go through that entire process and make sure that there is a case, get that signed and send it in.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and another issue too is that oftentimes we'll get a call and somebody will say, oh my gosh, I think I have this hernia mesh and I'm having problems. And we'll be, well, has a doctor diagnosed you? Have you seen the doctor? Have they said that there is a problem with the hernia mesh? No, I haven't yet. And so again, until you have medical confirmation that you've been injured by the product, you don't technically have a case.
Yeah.
So there will be some some time delay there. And likewise, I think we talked briefly last week about the Tylenol and the autism cases, and people were calling and saying, hey, my son's being tested for autism. He hasn't had the diagnosis yet. And so again, the case would not officially be a viable case until there was a diagnosis.
Yeah.
And that might be, delay the actual official signing of the case as well.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, every case is different, and what is required in order to actually file it and make it a case is different, which is why the time varies so much. But an average of 60 days, that was surprising to me, but it does make sense.
Yeah, I mean, and when you think about medical records, it makes a lot of sense because and it can easily take several weeks to get medical records.
Yeah.
So,
alrighty. Well, I think we are coming to a close here. Was there, again, any final statements, any closing out thoughts?
I think that'll do it.
Awesome. Well, I do want to thank everyone for tuning in this week, hanging out with us. If you have any questions or concerns, please reach out to us. 10K subscribers, absolutely fantastic.
Woo-hoo.
The only thing I want to see is a little bit more questions. We'd love to hear from you guys. We'd love to hear, either personal stories or thoughts or just, curiosities around the area, because I think there's a lot of stuff that I'm learning every show, and I'm sure there's a lot of questions when you're tuning in. And if it's something that you don't want to post in the comments, whether that's on Facebook, TikTok, YouTube, whatever it is, you can also email us, podcast@showeredlaw.com. Obviously, that is completely confidential and anonymous. And if it's something that you want us to talk about or share on the podcast, let us know, and we will be more than happy to go over it. But with that being said, I hope everyone has a fantastic week, and we will see you next week, same time, same day. Prioritizing profits.
Dangerous drug and product cases.